Hold on. That ain't proper. Give me a... Hold on. Okay, be smarter than the chair. Smarter than the chair. There we go. No. Okay, so apparently this is the only way this chair works. Alright. Good enough for me then, I guess. I guess it wasn't a matter of being smarter than the chair. It was just a matter of the chair being stubborn. Alright, so I've got... it's not really just one particular story for y'all today. It's rather a, kind of just a look back into how, you know, people of different eras, different times react to certain things. I am in no way one of these people that's like, oh, well, you know, young people have got their iPhones and their Teslas and their, you know, their iMacs and their iPads and their they got Apple and Mac. They can do everything online now. We used to have to go to the library and get books. All these young people got it so damn easy. Just shut it with that, alright? That's a bunch of nonsense. And I'm speaking as someone who's still young, who, like millions of people my age, struggles to get by just trying to get things that people back in the 70s and 80s who were my age had already had for 10 years because it was so easy. But that being said, dismissing this idea that just because we have better technology that somehow everything is just easy now, there are plenty of ways in which, I mean, not just young people, but just people in general now, things that just drive us crazy or things we can't handle. Well, like quarantining ourselves. Some people just refuse to do it because they just can't be patient and mature about this. But, like, you know, what about, say, flood rolls into town, and you've got, you know, I don't know, 2 feet of water building up in town. People freak out. They won't go outside. My shoes are ruined. You know, they just freak out. I mean, a foot of water, people will freak the hell out. You know, when I think of flooding in the city of Portland today, I think of, well... God, I wish I was on the max when that happened. You know I would have vlogged that. So that's kind of how I think of, like, floods today. But what people don't realize is, back in the day, in the city of Portland, the primary city, which, you know, now the downtown area, mostly, that area used to get flooded all the time. I feel like, do you see these shining lights down on me? I feel like Jesus is coming. Okay, so, again, as I said, you know, flooding in Portland used to be a much more regular thing. Nowadays we have the seawall by Waterfront Park, so we have this wall that goes up several feet above the usual height of the Willamette River that goes through the middle of town. So even if there's some flooding and there's a rise, I mean, even the flood of '96 in Portland, the water almost got over the seawall, but didn't quite. If a flood like the flood of '96 happened in, say, 1910, when the seawall wasn't there yet, that would have been a pretty serious flood. But I don't know if it would have quite matched the iconic status of what is arguably probably the greatest flood in Portland history, at least since we've kept records. There was a massive flood that came through in 1861. Like, they said, you know, a whole city's vanished. Literally, they're like Shampooey, which was a town, and now it's a state park, got destroyed overnight by the 1861 flood. So that was probably the worst flood, but it was so long ago that, like, specific records weren't really kept of it, whereas the flood that came through the city of Portland in 1894, that had records kept on it, and it's still to this day regarded as technically the greatest flood we ever had because it was the highest the water levels of the Willamette ever reached. 33.5 feet, I believe, above. Yeah, 33.5 feet. So it's still kind of regarded as, kind of the greatest flood in Portland history. And so you think, oh man, and there was no seawall. Front Avenue, which was the street that kind of ran along the river, it was only like a block off the Willamette. Once streets crossed through there, they just kind of went down a little bit and just kind of ended at the river. There was no seawall. So flooding that's what made flooding more common and easier to happen was the river level wasn't all that far below city level, and there was nothing stopping it from rising and then going up into the city. And this was the state of things in 1894. So when a flood happened, it was easy for the waters to rise. And in 1894, this flood reached like 5-6 feet of water in certain areas. In most places, based on the pictures I saw, it looks like the water was about 2 to 3 feet deep. But you see a lot of people whose legs are mostly underwater, but the rest of them are fine. But again, when you look at the way people today would react to a foot of floodwaters today, and just how, if a foot of water spread all through downtown Portland today, everything would shut down. People would be running. Not everybody, people would be freaking out. People would be wondering about the damages that they would have to deal with, which are all genuine concerns, but it's just that's what it would be like today. 1894, it was just another rainy day to these people. Literally, I'm not kidding. Not only, even with these several feet of water spread through pretty much the most prominent part of Portland. Some parts of Portland, it went almost 12 blocks back. I think I read that the furthest back the water got, from the Willamette was 12th and Kearny Street. So 12 blocks off the river, and there was flooding. So you'd think a flood that serious, again, arguably the greatest one we ever had in the Portland area, you'd think people would just be shutting down. People would be sandbagging their home. They'd be staying home. Businesses would be closed. People would be frantic. They'd be worrying. But these people just dealt. I'm not kidding. All these pictures you see of people from the 1894 flood, and all these men, a lot of them are dressed in what look like probably some of the best clothes they have. And literally, some of these pictures, you'd think people would be trudging through the water, get me out of this crap. And there's a bunch of pictures of men standing waist deep, almost in water. And it's like they saw a camera and they just stopped and posed. They didn't care that their bodies were half underwater. And this was, just runoff water. It was settling water. There were stories of people relieving themselves in the water, which back in 1894, I would believe it. And these people just dealt. They just would stand in the water and pose for photographs. And in certain areas, they built elevated sidewalks that looked so unsafe. They would have these really thin wood boards that they would kind of make little ramps out of to get you from one side of the street to the other. If the bank's here and you need to get to the delicatessen across the street, go up over the elevated sidewalk. And there were these thin wood boards supported by a couple wood planks that kind of went out like that. And you look at, there's places where there's several feet between each support plank and it's thin wood, and you'd think someone with enough girth or something, that wood in the middle would just at one point. And maybe that happened. I don't know. I didn't find any photographs of that. So the thing is, people didn't stay home. People came out in droves. And I'm not just talking about people that had to work. I'm talking about people that didn't necessarily have to do anything that day. Stores stayed open because people wanted to go out and shop. People got in their rowboats and canoes and rode through town just to get to the store to buy a few things. People kept going to the bars and restaurants. And they said that they had traffic jams in downtown. Well, what is today downtown Portland was just generally the primary city of Portland. They had traffic jams a la how car traffic jams are today, because so many people were just rowing through town. Everybody went out and just went about their business. And I found just some jewels in relation to how different people, different businesses handled this flood instead of just closing their doors and saying, well, wait it out, which is obviously what would happen today. And, you know, businesses, people literally would still go to work. They would row themselves to work in a little rowboat or something. And some of them would literally go into their business, which was, you know, several feet underwater at this point, and still conduct business. They would conduct business out of their rowboat. I found this picture of, these are people that were Goodyear employees. It was called, it says the Goodyear Rubber Company at the time. And you've got 12 guys inside their station, their store, whatever, you know, 6 to a boat. They were just there. They came in and worked. And I know there was a business that did this too. The Bureau Saloon, as it's called. The head guy there that produced the food and stuff, he rowed into work in a little rowboat and rowed his way up behind the bar and started his day job and started cooking food while he sat in a rowboat. Like, it was like there was no concern about how big of a deal it was going to be to clean these places up after the waters receded. You know, the damages that were going to happen. People it was like, today's a work day and we're all going to go out and do what we were going to do before we realized these floodwaters were going to roll in. But to one up the Bureau Saloon by having workers come in on boats and just kind of sit in their boat inside the saloon and continue to do their labor, the Erickson Saloon on 2nd Avenue, which is a really iconic spot in Portland. I mean, it's still a really prominent historical place now. It was one of the most popular saloons in Portland, even way back in the day. And so, you know, if everybody else is going to come to work, we got to keep working. But the Erickson Saloon is prominent, it's popular, it's high class. They ain't just going to row a few employees inside of the saloon and conduct their business. Because they were on 2nd Avenue, so they were like 3 blocks or so inland from the river. But again, the floodwaters were several feet high. Because they were just a little ways off of Burnside. Burnside's one of the main streets that cuts through downtown. It's the road that's used to separate North and South Portland. And back then, you know, it just kind of went to the water like the rest. They were able to get a houseboat off the Willamette, and they just floated it down Burnside a few blocks and stopped it near Erickson Saloon. And for that time, during the flooding, Erickson Saloon operated out of this little houseboat that they had brought off the river down Burnside Street and just had it floating there in a few feet of water, and that's where they conducted their business out of. So they were a prominent saloon, and when things like this happened, they were going to kick it up another notch. They got a whole new establishment on the water going. And yeah, a lot of places that were at least going to do short-term customer business, you know, there goes my paper. Hotels, restaurants, department stores. A lot of them literally built artificial flooring on the first floor of their establishments so that people could literally row up to the front entrance on their boat and then get out onto this artificial flooring and still go into the store. The Meyer and Frank store did that. Some hotels did it. Probably a few other. I do love how, like, you know, the Bureau Saloon, where, like, employees came in on a boat. I still feel like people that came in to drink, because everybody drank in Portland back in the days. That was just the thing. I could still see a lot of guys walking in, you know, the stools they sit on are literally at water's level, and they're like, I don't care. I came here to get a drink. I came here to get several drinks. My home is 5 feet underwater, so however much I drank yesterday, I'm drinking twice that much today. I could just see a lot of guys just walking to the saloon, trudging through the water, even though it's a pain in the ass and you're going to be soaking wet the whole time. It was like, I still am going out to drink today. The people just lived their lives. They were undaunted. It was literally just another day in the city of Portland, while it was several feet underwater. And yeah, near it was on Second Avenue, so in the vicinity of where Erickson's Saloon is, because it's on Second Avenue, technically in Chinatown, just north of Burnside. Along Second Avenue, there they held boat races. Like they actually turned what was technically I was saying national disaster, a natural disaster. They turned it into fun and games, and they had people race their boats up, I guess, north on Second Avenue. They had boat races through Chinatown. They took it in stride, and this is my favorite part that I'll leave on, because obviously, you know, the objective of this is just to say this is how the people of Portland reacted to a massive flood. 126 years ago, you know, in ways we would never think of it today. Now, I don't know if this is real. Even the newspapers seem to say, well, this is kind of a story going around. It sounds like a fish story, if you ask me. A man claimed that he was at a railroad station. Now, I don't know if that's Union Station or, you know, there was so many trains running through town, and that was the darker side of things. Was, you know, so much commerce was stopped. Trains couldn't get through town to transport their goods. There was like electrical damage to buildings, so there were the negatives. But whatever the case, there was some railroad station, I don't know where, you know, but in Portland, flooded, a couple feet underwater like the rest of the town. And there was a man who claimed that he went to the railroad station and caught a 15-pound steelhead inside the railway station. The floodwaters had just started bringing fish into the city of the actual land of the city of Portland. This guy claimed that inside the railway station he caught a 15-pound fish. Now maybe that's a fish story, but I don't know. I don't have the resources or the personal eyewitness accounting to say whether that actually happened or not. But I just loved that people just dealt in 1894 Portland. You know, it sucked that their city was underwater, but they kept going about their business. And again, if a foot of water covered the same amount of land today, people would freak. Not necessarily get into hysterics, but people would just be like, oh my god, ew, my shoes are getting dirty. Oh, I'm gonna have to mop the floor tomorrow morning, son of a bitch, you know. And there would be some property damage. I don't mean to laugh at people's misfortunes when it comes to things like floods affecting them. Some people's lives have been ruined by big floods in the past, but I'm talking about minute floodwaters compared to what the city of Portland was dealing with in 1894, that they didn't let get them down. Not here, not in my town. So I had to bring that story to you guys in this time of quarantine, if nothing more to make you chuckle, because we all need a little chuckle right now to save us from the depressive state of affairs in our country, in our world right now. So hopefully that helped you feel a little bit better about the day. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, share, and subscribe if you so choose. And hit up my Patreon if you want. And till next time, again, thank you so much for watching. This has been Steve, the Amateur Historian.